In this video, I'm going to recap my experience selling Pokemon cards at the local Comic-Con for the third year in a row. We're going to break this down into three separate elements. I'm going to review the inventory that I'm going to bring to the show. I'm going to talk about how I set up at my tables and some of the struggles I experienced with that. And of course, we're going to recap the overall experience and how the sales compared to previous years. We're going to kick it off by going through the inventory. So everything on this table is my inventory for the show. There's two Preza cases. There's one behind that one. We got a couple boxes of value graded cards. And then we have 6 full binders. Let's go through. I'll show you everything we got. So first thing are the Preza travel cases here full of slabs. So we got PSA. You can see we actually have a tag slab there from that return. We also have a couple CGC in here as well. But these are going to be all the graded cards above $50. So all graded cards below $50 will be in my value bins. All graded cards above $50 will be actually in the display cases that will be on the table for people to, look at and browse. These are all in alphabetical order. I like to keep everything in alphabetical order. I think it makes it easy for me to lay them all out in a nice, neat looking way. And it also makes it easy for people to browse, because when someone's looking at the graded cards, I can just say all the graded cards in alphabetical order, starting A here all the way through Z. We don't only have one case, we have 2 cases. So our second case is just going to be more of those over $50 graded Japanese cards. So we're starting at Houndoom, and I think it goes all the way back to a couple of Zapdos cards in the back. So we've got basically the whole alphabet full, couple hundred graded cards probably that we're gonna have available in the cases. Now let's move to the quote unquote value graded cards, which are the graded cards less than $50. Very similar situation here. I like to keep everything in alphabetical order. Now that doesn't stay the case for very long for these boxes, because once people start looking through them and browsing and stuff, they get out of order pretty quickly. So yeah, you can see we have Absol. This will go all the way back to like Charizards, Charmeleon, stuff like that. We have Darkrai. This will go all the way back to Infernape and Jirachi. And then yeah, it just goes all the way probably to another Zapdos card or a Venusaur card or something in the back there. So I like doing these like value slab boxes because it doesn't take up a very big footprint on the tables, but you can put a lot of cards. Next up, we have 6 binders. 6. So a lot of these cards are going to be leftovers from Collecticon Charlotte that I did a couple weeks ago. That was super successful. The binders did really well there. We got like 3,000 ultra rares in from Japan, and I spent most of last weekend pricing all those out. So I'm going to have a ton of Japanese ultra rares for all the little kids that come by and want like $2 to $5, maybe $10 cards. We're not going to go page by page, but I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about. So these are all sorted by type. These are all lightning, and then it goes to psychic, and it goes all the way back. Dragon, you can see I tried to focus like popular Pokemon. Like you have a bunch of Rayquaza there. Back here you had a lot of Giratina, Dragonite, stuff like that. But it basically goes GXs, Vs, VMAXs, V-Stars, and EXs. And what I would do is if I had a popular Pokemon, I'd put like 3 or 4 of that card in here. And then if I had kind of a less popular Pokemon like Noivern, for instance, I might put like 1 of each of those cards in here. So I tried to really weight it toward what I think sells well. So yeah, this is just all ultra rares. It goes all the way back to fighting. And then this one starts with fire, and I think goes all the way back to like grass and water and stuff like that. Now, the nice thing about this lot that I bought from Japan, I basically got all these cards for about 30 cents. And as you can see, a lot of these cards are like 2, 3, some of them are 7, some of them are like 5. So the profit margin on these is actually pretty good, despite each of the cards being pretty cheap. Now, the rest of these binders are binders that I had at Collecticon Charlotte. So this one here, all shiny Pokemon. So they're shiny ultra rares, full art, stuff like that. And then we'll get into baby shinies, a lot of shiny treasure EX and all that jazz. And then I think as we go further back, we get into art rares. So I bought a big old lot of art rares for about 70 cents a piece. And as you can see, again, kind of similar to the ultra rares, a lot of them are like 2, 3, sometimes $5. I just like having these binders full of, lower cost cards, because a lot of these local events, it's not really like Collecticon where a lot of people are going around doing buyouts. A lot of people are looking for very specific cards. This is like kids that have a small budget from their parents. They want to maximize that budget and get as many cards as possible. So that's why I like to have a lot of these lower cost cards, because I want a kid to walk away from the booth happy. And the best way to do that is to provide a lot of lower cost stuff that they can buy all at once. Binder number 4 is SARs and secret rares, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to get into some gold cards. We've got some SARs, some really cool looking cards over here. And then we've got some rainbows. We've got some trainer cards. And then I think we're going to get back into the secret rare full art Pokemon. Binder number 5. You were probably thinking, are you going to have any English at the show? Yeah, a little bit. Like one binder basically. And this is kind of just a hodgepodge. I don't have a lot of English stuff, so I just jammed this binder full as many English cards as I could find. Last but not least is the kind of mid-era, vintage, Japanese, kind of higher-end-ish type of cards. This was pretty picked over from Collecticon because this was more of the stuff that people at Collecticon were looking for. Got some mid-era holos, some GXs, stuff like that. Some more GXs, some full arts. We got some Pokecune cards, black and white holos, and it just kind of goes back from there. Amazing. Awesome. We've got some great stuff. Hopefully it sells well. Let's cut to the show. So while I was setting up, I recorded a quick 360 of the room to show you not just my location, but actually the size of the vendor hall and what kind of booths surrounded me at this particular show. So just like last year, once again, I am the first impression of the show. I'm literally the booth right at the front. When people walk in the door, they see me, they see Pokemon, and of course, they see all the comic book vendors around me. So it's pretty awesome to always be put right at the front because the kids come running up and they immediately want to start buying Pokemon cards. So for this show, I purchased 2 tables, and with doing 2 tables and being at the front of the show, I got put on a corner, which usually is totally fine. But for this show, I wanted to try doing my very first vendor POV video. And little did I know that a corner section for a vendor POV was going to make it a little bit more difficult. Basically, any angle that I was going to put the camera was going to cut off almost one entire table and was going to have you guys facing our backs the whole time. You like to have that nice angle that shows the people and it shows the sellers and it shows some of the product and you get a decent view of everything. But thankfully, leading up to the event, I learned that there was a vendor that hadn't paid for his table yet. So I asked the organizers to put that table next to mine, and if the guy didn't show up, I would spread out onto the 3rd table and take that one as well. So when 9 o'clock rolled around and the guy hadn't shown up yet and the guy hadn't paid for his table yet, they let me know that I was able to spread out onto that 3rd table, which made the vendor POV situation a lot better because I was able to then put the camera on that table and face it toward all the binders, and it ended up working really well. So stay tuned for my first vendor POV video. Should be coming out in the next couple weeks. So as we mentioned in the inventory section of this video, I brought 6 binders, and thankfully we got that extra table because with 6 binders, they would have been stacked one on top of another in rows of 3, and that would have been a massive cluster for all of these kids and stuff trying to look at all the different cards, instead of being able to just spread them all out across 2 tables, which ended up working really well. It almost created like an assembly line of kids. They would just start at the one end and work their way down and then start little piles, and we would just move the piles down binder to binder until the end when mom and dad came around to pay for the cards. 6 binders though is a lot to keep track of, and I was being helped again this year by my mom. So what I decided would be a good idea to do was I created a little cheat sheet that had kind of what was in the binders listed out in the order that the binders were actually displayed on the table. You can see on this sheet, I accidentally wrote them upside down or wrote them in the wrong way, so she had to rewrite them for me. But this cheat sheet came in handy when I was busy with someone at the graded cards and my mom was holding down the fort at the binders. If someone asked her for a specific Pokemon, she would yell over to me and be like, hey, where are the Dragonite cards? And I could say, look in the binder with the Dragon Pokemon. Or, hey, where's the Infernape? Look in the binder with the Fire Pokemon. And she was able to know which binder probably had the Pokemon that the kids were actually looking for. This is the first show where I decided to set up a little sign that said, paying cash for Pokemon collections. And what I wanted to do is, I get so busy during these events, especially this one, there's so many kids and stuff running around, that it's hard for me to really trade or buy from people or really kind of go back and forth on someone who might have some things to sell to me, but maybe they didn't bring it to the actual show. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it known that I buy collections for cash, but then I also had a list with a pen and my business cards. If someone had something to sell, but I was busy, they could write down their email and their name on the list, and then I would reach out to them after the convention. A lot of times, if you just have business cards, people will take the business cards and then they'll forget, and then they'll not reach out to you, and nothing will ever come of it. But I thought if people wrote down their information, then I could take the initiative to reach out to them and start the conversation earlier. Unfortunately, a lot of people just took the business card and didn't really sign up. We had a couple signups, but overall, it didn't really work as well as I was hoping. I thought it was a good idea, but it didn't really get executed all that well. And then, of course, the third table had all of the graded cards. So I've had these 2 display cases for a long time now. They are looking worse for wear, and they're not really holding as many graded cards as I need them to hold anymore. Having the little bridges or the little shelves in there kind of restricts how many many cards you could actually put in those cases. As opposed to the Collecticon ones, there are no shelves. You can stack and overlap cards however you want to kind of fit as many in there as humanly possible. So I had to be a little choosier than I would have hoped on which Pokemon actually got to be put in the display cases because I had so many graded cards. So basically, like the binders, how I would choose more of the popular Pokemon to put in the binder than the less popular Pokemon, I did that with the graded cards as well. Most of the graded cards that were in the cases were of the more popular Pokemon, and then maybe I would include like one Crobat or one Infernape, where I would include most if not all of the Charizards, most if not all of the Gyarados, for instance. So that's how the section was set up for the day. Bring on the kids. Whew. That was a long but fun day, as it always is. It's funny, it's actually only a 1-day, 6-hour show, but for some reason it feels so long. And I think that's because you're interacting with so many people. Like Collecticon, a lot of times it's one person here and there comes by, one person here and there comes by, maybe one or two people here and there come by. You usually don't have like a crowd surrounding the table. And as you can see in some of the footage, we had a lot of people there at once, a lot of times, and you were constantly going back and forth between conversations, trying to keep things separate and together. And it was wild. It's a fun show, and it makes me really bullish on the hobby doing these local shows with all of these kids that are so excited about Pokemon cards still, and so excited even to see a lot of Japanese Pokemon cards. And that's what's super cool about these shows, is you can have these more personal kind of conversation and experiences with people instead of just, oh yeah, well, I'll buy this for this percentage, I'll buy that for this percentage. And it's a lot less transactional, a lot less business, and a lot more just people enjoying Pokemon and wanting to chat with you about those experiences. One thing that really struck me as very strange was we had at least 2 or 3 kids come up and ask if the cards were real. And I don't know if that's a popular thing right now. Maybe there are some teachers or something that can let me know in the comments below on whether or not fake Pokemon cards are more of a thing. Like, are parents buying more fake Pokemon cards for their kids because the real Pokemon cards are too expensive or something like that? I'm not sure, but we had a lot of kids come up and be like, hey, are these actual like real cards? But overall, yeah, it was just fun to see all the kids super excited, and it really makes me bullish on the hobby itself, that it'll be around in the future and that kids are still collecting physical collectibles. I would say that overall this show felt slower than previous years, and the organizers actually told me that last year there was a little over 1,000 people that walked through, I think, and this year there was around like 900. So it's not really that big of a difference, but it felt like it kind of capped off earlier. Like 10 to 2 was really busy, and then 2 to 4 was pretty much dead. There wasn't a whole lot of action during that time. Speaking of different to Collecticon, one of the things that I really like about this local show, and that I think Collecticon could easily do that could be really fun for people actually going to the show instead of just having it be like a very transactional experience, is a cosplay contest. So many of the people that come up to the booth are cosplayers or people that show up in costume that come by and buy cards. So there seems to be a really big overlap in that community and the card collecting community. So it makes sense to me, and I think it would be a fun event for Collecticon to have and fairly easy to pull off, is have a cosplay contest. There's already so many more people that show up to Collecticons in cosplay. Why not advertise it as a bit of a cosplay contest? You could do a fun giveaway. You could even do like gift cards or like Collecticon cash or something that you can use at the booth, and then the vendors can redeem it for like legit money or something later. I don't know, something like that could be really fun to not only somewhat give back to the vendors with the prize money, but you also just have one more extra thing that you can do. Maybe on Sunday after Jason Page is done with his concert, you could do a fun cosplay contest. So overall, let's talk about sales. The binders did really well. I would say that the graded cards, I think the most expensive graded card I sold was like $100, and then a lot of the graded stuff came out of the value graded boxes, so graded cards less than 50. It was pretty annoying. At some time during the show, Venmo actually went down for like 2 of the 6 hours, which really sucked because I had it on all of my sheets as like a preferred payment method. So the fact that Venmo went down for a couple hours did not help us at all. Thankfully, it didn't seem like we lost any sales due to it, but it did really suck to have people kind of have those negative experiences trying to pull a Venmo. One thing I am looking into is a credit card reader. I know that you can get something for PayPal that reads cards, and I think Square is pretty easy to set up as well, but it's something that I want to have, I think, going forward for shows. There was multiple times when people wanted to pay with card, and I had to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't take card. Now, I didn't lose any sales because of it. They either did Venmo or they did cash or something like that, but it seemed like a lot of people's preferred way that they wanted to pay was card. So if I could facilitate that sometime in the future for not that much money and it's not that much of a pain in the butt, let me know in the comments below if you facilitate transactions with a card, and let me know what reader you guys use that is easy to use, simple to set up, and something that I can use in the future at these shows. Last but not least, let's go over the numbers. So in cash, I had $1,635. In Venmo, I had $442. With Zelle, I had $75. And with PayPal, I had $162. All of those sales add up to $2,314, which to me is super solid for a 6-hour show on a Saturday. Last thing I want to say is one thing that really helped was at the end of the show, a vendor came by and bought out my English binder at 70%. So a lot of that English stuff, like I said in the inventory, was stuff that was just sitting around. I grabbed it all, I shoved it in a binder, and I brought it with me. I was able to sell the entire binder at 70%, which I think came out to $980. So that really obviously helped boost my sales for the day. I think without that, the sales were around like $1,250 or something like that if you remove the 980. But overall, I felt like it was a really solid 6 hours. I mean, it's a 5-minute drive from where I live, so it's really not that big a deal to set up over there. I just really like doing this event. So it was a solid show. I definitely recommend if you guys are in the Wake Forest area in August, it's typically when they have it, check out the Wake Forest Comic-Con. It is a fun time. If you guys liked the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.